Start this discussion, I'd like to let you introduce yourself
And but I've always wanted to teach the liberal arts. So as a high school teacher, I teach like the Bible, and
of the Western
eventually I
canon,
started.
is what it sounds like. Yeah.
Right, right. So I don't teach
Yeah.
Chinese canon because I
Uh-huh.
don't my Chinese is not good enough. But I
Uh-huh.
teach the Western canon, and eventually I started to teach history as well because I recognize that in China you can't really teach the Western canon without the context, without teaching Western history. And I started to upload my lectures to YouTube because I wanted to share my ideas with a larger audience.
Hmm.
And for the first year, I got 300 subscribers, and I was really excited about that. I had great interactions with the audience, and then a couple months ago, my channel blew up. I'm about over
I see why Jiang is getting a criticism if he is talking to this type of videos.
600,000 subscribers now on YouTube, so it's been a wild ride.
No,
But
bro,
but 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 it's only been the past 2, 3 months.
you have to like remember it like he what he was saying before, like three, maybe 2 year ago, he was saying that these things will happen and USA will lose the war. And the side of I think right Zionist regime, they are not like in this way, like they don't like about this kind of mentality like USA, like how can I say it? My English is so fucked. I can't say it. It's going so sorry for swearing it.
My channel's been getting a lot of attention, and yeah, so that's where we are right now. My channel is called Predictive History, and some of you may know the channel, but the idea is I want to reimagine history the way it's taught, the way that it's conceived. And so my biggest concern about history is that it's not analytical, it's not structured. There's too much focus on individuals, there's too much focus on storytelling, and not enough on the analysis of structural forces that drive history. And so my project, it's a huge project, but my project is to reimagine history as a tool for us to better understand humanity, as well as to
Hmm.
predict the future. So the goal is to go back and reinterpret history to accomplish three goals. The first goal is that we're able to create a coherent story about humanity. Second goal is to help us better understand the present, to explain the present. And the third goal is to give us the tools to predict the future. So
Hmm.
that's what's called predictive history. Yeah.
Yes, I've been digesting your content really over the past month, but even especially over the past few days, and I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, I think you've become sort of a Jordan Peterson-like figure. Jordan Peterson was a rather obscure psychologist in Canada uploading lectures, and it caught on. And I hope the exact same thing happens with you. I
But I don't want the manic episode, right? I I want to
well,
avoid the
well, we would
yeah.
expect you to cry during this interview at some point, just
Right.
all your emotions. Yeah, that's the
Right.
path to the
I'll
top.
try my
Yeah.
best. I'll try my best, but yeah.
Uh, but okay, let's jump into history because Henry Ford said history is bunk.
Yeah.
History is a slaughter bench. There is so
Yeah.
much violence and irrationality, things about history you can't find any meaning in. I think for a lot of people,
Yeah.
history is a story, maybe even a moral story. You can learn about George Washington and the cherry tree and become a better person. Hegel, history is reason marching forward and becoming self-conscious of itself or something like that. So there's been attempts. I would say that for most people, history is detail. Maybe it's wars, diplomats, et cetera. But I mean, try to help us understand like where you're coming from because I mean, is it a sort of deterministic account? Almost, it's not Marxist, of course, but somewhat like Marx. Like there's class dynamics that are at play that are pushing us towards this, and scientifically we can understand it. Or give us a taste of how we could learn from the past and predict the future and better understand,
Yeah,
dynamics in the
that
present.
was funny.
Right. Okay. That's a great question.
First of all, I did not understand. Then I like clearly like explain your words, and I understand what that bro.
And my answer is going to
No.
be long-winded, so I apologize in advance.
Hmm.
But before I start to teach history, I actually spent some time teaching computer science.
Hmm.
So I spent quite some time understanding artificial intelligence and how it worked. So, and I became obsessed with how artificial intelligence works. But the idea about artificial intelligence is that you can create a feedback loop so that the output becomes the input. And what I mean by that is rather than you write the algorithm, rather than you write the code and try to figure out how something happens, what you do is you let the machine figure out the variables, the forces
I think this will be perfect.
that create the outcome. So you train the machine with the outcome, with the results, and then the machine tries to figure out how we got to these results.
Hmm.
And that's how artificial intelligence works. So, so my great insight is, well, we do the same thing with history, because every understanding of history, it is really an analytical model, right? It's an understanding of how the world works. There are values, there are assumptions embedded in your model. And because it's an analytical model, it has to be also a predictive model because you're assuming that these values, these assumptions will stay consistent, right? So my argument is this. If history, if a historical understanding is correct, then we can analyze it and create predictions of the future. And these
Hmm.
predictions will allow us to validate or negate the model. At the very least, it will allow us to better understand the model and then to refine the model. So I'll give you an easy example. So if you look at how history is written, the assumption is it is teleological, meaning that we are
Hmm.
progressing towards a greater good or things are improving. And if you just look at what's happening today, clearly the teleological model doesn't work because how would you explain all these wars that are raging around the world? How would you explain what's happening in the Middle East? How would you explain all this civil conflict and economic malaise in the United States? How would you explain the election of Donald Trump? So I don't think history is theological. So I think that the current the world how the world's progressing, it sort of negates that theological model. But that's how I think about history.
Hmm. Well, do you think it's thus cyclical, or or is that more on your wavelength, or?
Yeah. So I think it's very important to always keep to have like different possibilities.
Hmm.
So as you mentioned, historically the debate has always been is history linear,
Hmm.
theological, or is it cyclical? And it just rhymes. It's bound to repeat itself. And um, I've been working on a new theory recently, and I'll just present it to you. But I warn you that it is a very immature, undeveloped theory. But my theory is that history is developed is sort of um, underpinned by narratives, by sacred stories.
Hmm.
And so what history really is, it's about humanity's attempt to achieve certain stories that they believe to be sacred and to be true in itself. And that's what drives societies. That's what drives history. You can another way of saying this is that history is almost eschatological, right?
Hmm.
So you have people obsessed with the second coming of Jesus, and for them, it's like, how do we create the conditions for the return of Jesus?
Hmm.
And you can make the argument that that's what's really driving the conflict in the Middle East. You have these Messianic Jews, you have these Christian Zionists who are obsessed with creating World War III because in their minds, that will compel the return of Jesus to restore peace in the world and create the Messianic millennium.
Christian Zionist or Jews Zionist?
The return is in their mind who are
Oh, Christian Zionist. Yeah. Yeah, there are two types of Zionists. There are Christian Zionists and there are Jews Zionists. Like both think that Jews think if we bring a chaos in this world, our Messiah will arrive. And Christian Zionists think the they bring a chaos the world the Jesus can arrive. There are more Christian Zionists in the world than the Jews. Yeah, you are right. But all the power right nowadays, right nowadays, it has with the Christians. The Christian has more power. Like Zionist Christian has more power. They control military.
obsessed with creating World War III because in their minds that will compel
And that's why they are helping Jew Zionists. Because they are both together, guys. Don't forget about these things.
the return of Jesus to restore peace in the world and create the Messianic millennium. Okay, that's what they think. And so my argument is that it's that perception is reality, belief is reality. So if enough people in power believe something, they can make it real. And that's what drives history. It's narrative that creates reality. It's stories that create the world we live in today.
Well, and mind before matter, which is something you talked
Yeah,
about in your lectures on the development of polytheism to monotheism,
yeah.
et cetera. We do seem to assume that, there's a brain, a clump of gray matter and cells and so on, and a mind develops from that. The ancients thought something very different. And as an analogy, you could think about that in terms of world history, that there's some great story that is being retold over and over again. We're telling it to ourselves. And that story is informing in ways we can't fully understand, maybe unconsciously, our decisions and actions. And sometimes even consciously. I mean, there's no doubt that you can look back to the Middle Ages and see a great deal of stasis. Nothing much happened. At least, I shouldn't say that. Of course, many things happened, but nothing much changed. There wasn't a sense of development in people's minds, and maybe that had something to do with the fact that this world is just a waiting room. That this world doesn't matter. Your best life is later on. So there's really you can build monuments pointing upwards towards God, but there's no real reason to develop anything right now because we're going to shuffle off this mortal coil and live in eternity with God, and so there's no reason to develop. I mean, I'm also thinking here of political theology, which we could define as the every political ideology attempt at legitimacy is a secularization of an earlier religion. And so there is something deeply Christian to the modern world. And obviously, people were more perhaps sincere Christians in the Middle Ages. But we've, in a way, attempted to actualize it in modernity in the sense that we're pushing towards heaven on earth. We're pushing towards a new humanity, et cetera. And you can obviously see that in revolutionary movements, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, even certainly in the development of communism. We are it. This whole slaughter bench of history is going to end with us, and there's a deep Christian core to that type of thinking. And so once that thinking is embedded in a mind, then historical actors, whether they be politicians or warriors or scientists, are going to conform to that idea. And so it's a sort of explanation of human action. There's a narrative behind it. It's not all just individual will and rationality. We're trying to fulfill something that's been in our brains since we were children. We're trying to fulfill that in this world.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I mean, that's exactly right. I think the major phrase that resonates is heaven on earth.
Hmm.
And I think that's a major break from the past, where, as you say before, we always assumed that this was just a stop on a journey, an internal
Hmm.
journey through the heavens, and we're here to experience certain things we could not experience up in the heavens, because here we have corporal bodies, we're physical, but up there we are spiritual. So this is a place. It's part of the journey, but it's not the end of the journey. Um, and everything we do here is to prepare ourselves for the journey up there, which is what really matters.
Hmm.
And as you say, this past 100 years, I mean, really with the beginning of modernity, right? With Freud and with Einstein and with Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, our mindset has changed so that we believe that we are heaven and we can create heaven on earth. And
Hmm.
that's really the entire project of Western civilization, of modernity today, to use science, to use psychology, to use economics, to create a paradise on Earth. And on one hand, that's extremely idealistic. But on the other hand, it's also very scary, because you can argue that we're playing God.
Hmm.
And so you see the rise of artificial intelligence, you see the rise of eugenics, you see communism, right? I mean, like, these are all attempts to create heaven on earth. But the underlying assumption is that we can be God, and any Christian will
Hmm.
tell you that that's actually very dangerous to think.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think maybe so much
Free Israel, free America. From whom? From themselves. That's weird. There's like
of the disappointment and heartache that we see in everyday life? No one's happy, and I'm speaking as an American. You can
Yeah.
talk to people on the left, on the right. The left will love that Luigi Mangione shot
I think there is no left and right. There is just trying to control a people. Like if you create a two sides, people will start fighting each other. They will not think. They will not think on the middle. What is the on the middle? Who is controlling both sides? I think both sides are controlled by someone else, and that's why US's population has no idea who is controlling them, and they are like they are captured. The, they have to think. If they stop thinking about the right and left, they start thinking on the middle. They will find out who is controlling them, and they will wake up. Then they will wake up.
that fat bastard who had too much money and was keeping healthcare from the people. The
Yeah.
right are in a sort of
Professor Jiang.
state of paranoia in many ways about the deep state and the government and people trying to turn them transsexual and so on. There's a general unhappiness. And I was wondering if that had something to do with the fact that we've sort of lost the story of the 20th
Not
century.
Jan,
We don't
Jan,
quite
Jan
have it
is
anymore. We don't
Chinese
have that
name.
utopia that we're pushing towards. And let me just throw out one example that's more concrete. Brezhnev, the premier of the Soviet Union, gave a speech at one point in the
You can see his
I
name.
believe in the late 70s, and he said something to the effect, well,
That's the name.
Karl
You
Marx
can see
wasn't
his
about
name
fairy
here.
tales. He was a scientist. And so we're not quite yet at
Free Israel from the fake European and free America from the Captain
communism. We're still in the socialist stage,
his
but
name.
through bureaucratic excellence, moving step by step in that direction. And within 15 years, the whole thing came crashing down. And I think maybe he got it wrong in the sense that Karl Marx is a fairy tale, actually, at some point. He is telling you a story about the past and this amazing world to come that actually.
I think you have no idea. All Jews support Israel. All Jews. If anywhere Jews live, he send his money toward the Israel. You have to find out these things are happening.
Inspires you to sacrifice and to look to the stars and imagine a new world. And the moment the Soviet Union lost that was the moment that it started to actually come crashing down. And I think there's a lot of similarities in the United States with Brezhnev as Joe Biden, these old men in charge of.
There is Zionist, no Zionist. No.
This thing, they're sort of calling back to the past, calling back to the Cold War, but they're not really looking ahead. And so I guess what I'm getting at is maybe like that.
It's a fake thing. It's a fake thing. Like there is a Jew, just Jew. They are all Zionist guys.
That loss of that utopian desire might really be at the heart of the disappointment that we see everywhere. You'll see it in your neighbors, you'll see it on far leftists, you'll see it on conservative activists. They all seem to agree.
Yeah, bro, you have to do more research about the Jews and try to watch videos of Jews, how they think.
It hasn't worked out, that it's getting worse, and that it's not headed anywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I'll give you a counterexample to what's happening in the Western world. You look at the Houthis in Yemen, okay? These are people who've been poor all their lives. They have no access to technology. They might have some ballistic missiles brought up from Iran, but I mean, like, they're still.
If you are not trusting my word, you have to do a research, bro. Just saying it will not happen yet, bro. I have done it. I have made so many live streams on the Jews just to understand their mindset. They are working for their Messiah, guys. Yes, you can watch my other live streams. I was watching them.
A pretty low technology society. They're very poor. But I guarantee you, the Houthis in Yemen, they're probably happier. They're probably a lot happier than Americans. And there are certain reasons why. I mean, first of all, they're extremely spiritual people, right? I mean, like they are Shias. They really believe in their religion. There's a unifying story. There's a unifying mythology to their society. That's the first point. The second point is that they're living for a higher purpose. I don't think they're being political or manipulative or calculating when they say that they care about what's happening in Gaza, and they will not stop until Israel stops what's happening in Gaza. I think they're being extremely sincere. And the third thing is, death war and death gives meaning to people. America, Western society has created a society that fears death, that thinks that death is the worst thing that can happen to you. And as a result, people aren't taking risks. People don't have the freedom, the liberty to they don't have agency anymore. And I think that if you don't have community, if you don't have purpose, if you don't have agency, it's very hard to live a happy, creative, and meaningful life. And that's the fundamental issue facing not just America, but all of Western society today.
Um, yes, absolutely. So let's talk about the Middle East here because it's it's not just a region of the world, and it's also not just a region of the world in which there are immense stores of petroleum. Those are obviously important things. But
Yeah,
it's also the Holy Land. It's
that's
the
right.
story told in the Torah about a small people escaping persecution under Pharaoh and living in the wilderness and then ultimately marching into Canaan, establishing a kingdom at some point and going through all sorts of adventures and ups and downs along the way. So it has theological importance. I mean, even with someone who's in the news now, Charlie Kirk, they would say, what are your thoughts on Israel and so on. He's like, well, gosh, I feel like there's a lot of violence and ethnic cleansing, but just keep in mind this is where Jesus walked on water and raised people from the
Yeah.
dead and turned water into wine. It had this emotional.
Also, Jews believe that the time period will arrive. They can do a resurrection. Resurrection. They can revive the dead.
Contact
Yeah.
with
It's
him,
not
and
me.
thus
What?
I don't think he could have
It's
he could
not me
ever
who is saying
give it
it.
up, because it's on that
The rabbi was
level
telling it.
of his being.
Yeah.
But how do we understand? Because I mean, you look at the
And we know all who resurrect, who did the resurrection of the humans. Like if someone died, who revived the humans? We all know it's Jesus. It's Allah.
Middle East now,
And they don't
it's
believe it.
blood and guts. Obviously, Israel is engaging in an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. There are tons of machinations going on, and et cetera. It looks chaotic, but how do we understand it in terms of a story of from the Bible, or a theology?
Yeah, so Jerusalem has been at the heart of human history for a long,
Mm,
long time. And there are many reasons why, right? So you mentioned the eschatological, theological, religious element, okay? And we'll talk about that later on. But we also remember that throughout human history, this region, the Levant, was really the center, the epicenter of global trade. I mean, if
hmm
you wanted to go from Egypt to Anatolia to Mesopotamia to Europe, you had to go through the Levant. So the Levant was always contested territory, and back in those days, whoever controlled the trade routes was the empire of that day, and that's why Israel has featured prominently throughout human history, and that's why if you are an Israelite, you really did believe that you were center of the world because everyone was trying to grab your territory. And as you say today, now there's all this oil in the Middle East. So you make the argument that from a historical perspective, the Levant really is the center of the world.
mm
Certainly, what happens to the Levant is what drives human history. Um, but to answer your question, like if you talk about the eschatological elements, people believe that Jerusalem is the holy city. And I'm not sure if you've been to Jerusalem. I've been to Jerusalem for one day,
hmm
and it is really the most beautiful, the most sacred, the most holy city in the world. I mean, like you just walk the city, you can feel all that holy energy. It really is a deeply spiritual experience. If you're open to that sort of thing and just walk the streets of Jerusalem, and it's a really, really small place. It's really cramped, but
hmm
the sort of like religious devotion, the religious energy in that small area, it's just immense, right? It's a meeting place of many different religions. You have the Al-Aqsa Mosque, you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you have of course the Western Wall. So from a religious perspective, it's really the epicenter of the world. So I think it's natural for people to believe that this is where history began and this is where history will end, right?
mm
And history ends with the second coming of Jesus.
hmm
And that's what people are praying for. And what's really important for us to understand is it's not just the Jewish faith, it's many faiths. You have the Islamic faith who believe that Jerusalem will be The second will be the end of the world. You have the Orthodox, you have the Catholic, you have all these different faiths that all converge on Jerusalem. And so, my thesis is that narrative drives history. And because the
Hmm.
Second Coming is such a powerful narrative, people are drawn to that place. But not only are they drawn to that place, but they feel compelled by that they're compelled by their faith to act out their belief. And the story is very, very compelling. Like a world war in which Israel stands up against the entire world, the war of Gog and Magog, uh, Armageddon, and this will
Hmm.
lead to the Messianic age with Jesus returns. I mean, if you just like what like I'm not a religious person, but I did study literature, and I can tell you that just from a literary perspective, it's a beautiful, moving, compelling story that compels people into action. It's very inspiring,
Hmm.
and it's really the most powerful story in the world. That like through our actions, for our sacrifice, we can achieve heaven on earth. We can achieve the Messianic age, and if you just act out the script, then everything will be fine. I mean, it really is the greatest drama. It really is the greatest movie,
Hmm.
and you can be a participant in it. And so I think that's what's going on in the Middle East. And so if this theory is correct, then then we make certain predictions about what will happen in the Middle East. Well, first of all, what's happening in Gaza is certainly part of the eschatology, right? Because what's happening in Gaza, it's really I mean, driving the world against Israel. I mean, like if you say normal human being and you see what Israel is doing in Gaza, you can't feel but you can't feel but be disgusted
Hmm.
and contemptuous of what's happening. So that's number one. I think that what's happening in Gaza will over the next few months speed up. I know what's happening is terrible right now.
How how more they can like speed up the Gaza? The Gaza is like destroyed. Are they going to capture the Gaza? Like, I think they have captured the Gaza, or maybe they will build something there. What they will, what kind of possibility is there?
But they can do so much worse. And
They can
which is
outright
probably
seize
part
the territory for one thing. Yes.
and that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think they cut off internet access, so the world does not really know what's going on there anymore.
Mm.
Or maybe they are going to nuke it. Then no one will be there.
They launched a massive offensive in Gaza, and Netanyahu's come in and said that we need to be Sparta. We need to come together as a military society to achieve the prophecy. Okay, so I think what's happening in Gaza will just speed up over the next few months. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, and I think number two is what's going to shock the world is eventually they will destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, because that's part of their eschatology, and
Right.
and 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 so I mean so. The thing about religion is astrology and numerology really matter. So they have the date, okay? They know exactly when they will do this. All the preparations are in place. But because
Hmm.
I don't have access to their numerology, I mean, like, so it's part of the Kabbalah. They have this like
Hmm.
numerology, astrology.
No, but there's another situation, guys. The Jews believe their Messiah will arrive and he will build the mosque. That's why I think they are not going to destroy it. Right now, they are not going to destroy it. They will wait, or they are waiting, but they are creating a situation of their Messiah can arrive and he can build their third temple. I think anytime they can want, anytime they want to destroy the Alexa mosques, they can do it. Well, anytime. Because they have killed so many child in this time period, no one has done it anything. If the mosque destroyed, I think no one will do. Don't care.
So they have these people who spent years figuring out the exact date to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. because that is the most opportune or the most heavenly, the most divine time. So they have that date. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm sure that if you have some expertise in the Kabbalah, and you do some digging, you can figure out that date. But they have that date, and they will destroy that Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it'll come out of nowhere. I mean, it might just be a rocket come out of nowhere and blow that thing up. I don't know how they'll do it, but it's going to shock the world, and that's the intention, to shock the world.
Hmm.
So I think and I think it will happen really quickly because they have the red heifer in place. So I'm not sure if you know much about
Yes, no,
the
I do. Yes.
yeah. So they have the red heifer, right? And like they have I think a 1 or 2 year time frame in order to actually sacrifice the red heifer to consecrate the third temple. So it's going to happen within the next 2 years.
Well,
Okay.
according to this fellow on Tim Pool, the red heifer has been sacrificed.
There is a rabbi and he's talking with this in this time period of Hitler. I think he's the worst than Hitler, maybe, but he's close to that. Let's hear the rabbi. He's like saying him to increase the time period, like do everything fast that the Messiah can arrive. And
מרובה לנאום שלו הראשון.
שמעתי וראיתי את
אני
המסר
רוצה שתמשיך בקו זה, ואת הקדוש ברוך הוא מסייע לכל הרצון לתאר אחר. אבל הסכמנו וכמה מתחילים בקשי עצמך. פרטקתי דלייך, אני מתעזר, ורבים עבר עניינים כאלה.
אני מתכוון להמשיך בדיוק בקו הזה. קלטתי היטב את המסר שלו.
וזה הקו הכי טוב בשביל
הקו היחידי.
שלא
it is the best path to avoid the war. Goodbye.
הצטרפנו לכל עניין של בחומר ובכל רגליציה. אני בשוב ובנחס כבשם. לך והצלחה.
אני מודה לך על ההזדמנויות שנתת לי, לבוא ולעזר בך, לשרוד, לקבל את הסיוע הגדול הנפשי שאתה נותן לי. לא רק לי, לכל עם ישראל.
אני עדיין בתחילת המסע שלי.
אני יודע, בגלל זה...
גם את בתחילת התפקיד האחרון.
אני בא בתחילת מעשה לאדם בתחילת מעשה, ואני מתכוון לחזור אליך בעבודתה.
עתידי סודק לי צדיק עם מאיר ב9-10 אנשים. לבד לבית סלחים, כאילו שהקדוש ברוך הוא לצד הזה. ברכה והצלחה, ניסים של הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכה והצלחה.
I think it's another video. Yep. Where he said like do everything. Yeah, it's a bit straight.
Sacrificed, in fact. I don't know if you saw that. But
Okay.
yeah, make of it
I-
what.
No, they said 6,000, not 2,000. No, 6,000. The Messiah will arrive, and no.
But you
I've seen
will.
that.
Yes,
I've seen that.
this person named
According to Jews calendar is like in the 5,786 or maybe 786 or 780.
King, who's well connected in the right wing,
Right now
and,
it's going
he's
on.
a super Jew of some kind. He announced that the red heifer actually had been ritualistically sacrificed. Yeah, Adam King is his name. And so this is happening. Now, he announced that on Tim Pool's show. I mean, make of that what you will. Maybe he's a dreamer. But clearly something is happening. This isn't just some biblical story. This is something that they're directly pursuing. And let me get also to something just to put some emphasis on this notion of being hated. So Jews are well accustomed to being hated. If you look at the stories that they tell of themselves, there is always a Pharaoh somewhere who is going to oppress them, enslave them, and not let them leave. And that could be a rather benign Pharaoh like the WASP establishment. That could be a terrible Pharaoh like Hitler. That could be 19th century anti-Semitism and forcing them to ghettos, et cetera, et cetera. There's always a story of persecution, and the stories throughout the Bible. Now, obviously, there's David's kingdom, there's triumph in Canaan, but Genesis, most all of Exodus, it's about persecution. They're used to it. Their identity is based in part, and to a large part, on being hated. So in some ways, I think what I'm hearing here is that, first off, they're used to it. Second off, they might want to gin it up. They're okay with being hated. They're okay with having the world.
These things are not right. Like these things, like will not predict when this world will end. It's God who will destroy it. God knows when this world will be destroyed. They're thinking like maybe this thing will happen in this time period. Like we can't rely on these things. This world will be destroyed in this time period or in that time period. But it's just a knowledge. It's not a like a, how can I say it? It's not a permanent thing. It will happen.
Turn on them, and that in fact is a great source of identity. If there's
relying on these things, I think it will not help us. Will not help us.
Anti-Semitic, Mamdani in New York City mayor. I'm not sure how anti-Semitic that guy is, but at least the story is you've got to flee.
Oh, he's a Jew supporter? Yeah, he's a Jew supporter? I think someone was in this live stream was talking about anti-Semitism that
Got to get out of there. Come to Israel. Donald Trump's the new Hitler. Come to Israel. So much of their identity works through that type of dynamic. And so doing something as shocking.
But there is a difference in this situation. They are creating the situation. They are just not predicting. They are just creating the situation that can arrive their Messiah. Because Christians know it and Muslims also know it that Jesus Christ, Jesus will arrive. Isa alayhi salam. Peace be upon him. He will arrive.
As destroying this mosque in Jerusalem, it's part of the game plan.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that if you just dabble in the
Kabbalah, it's like manifesting it. Yeah, it's saying, yeah.
Allah.
They are just
study a
creating
bit of numerology. You will discover it's always been part of the plan to blow that thing up. But it has to be blown up at a certain time.
According to Jews, according to Christians, first the Antichrist will arrive, and for killing the normal people can't kill the Antichrist. Isa alayhi salam, Jesus need to kill the Antichrist. That's why they will Jesus will arrive. That's why Jesus will arrive, for killing the Antichrist. According to Muslims, it's the same thing. It's like a same thing. He will arrive and he will fight with the Antichrist and he will kill him. He will be as a Dajjal, the liar who lies And Jews, I have like, no, I have listened the rabbi, they were talking about the world need to be like in this situation. Like I'm going to tell you which kind of situation world need to be. The in world need to be a chaos, and the people need to be godless, and political people need to be godless, and and what? And there was fourth thing, I don't remember it. In like these situations are creating by the Jews right now. Like they are creating it. They have created a chaos in this world. There is the there our governments are godless. People are most of the people are godless. Like we can find it. They don't believe in the God right now. They don't read books.
I'm very skeptical that they've sacrificed a red heifer because they would
Hmm.
sacrifice a red heifer in order to consecrate the third temple. So you first need to
Hmm.
destroy that Aztec mosque, and then you need to consecrate the land, that the territory, so that priests can go in and build that third temple. I mean, they're very, very specific. I mean, they're really
Hmm.
ritualistic. They have to follow things exactly for they have to follow things exactly. That's part of the religion. I mean, it's a very priestly religion. They're extremely ritualistic. They're extremely obsessive compulsive. So I don't think they sacrificed it. They would not screw up the timeline like that. But
Hmm.
your larger point about, Jews and creating hatred in order to create a sort of like ethnic identity for themselves. So I'm not sure how much you know about Jewish history, but I'll give you my overall framework of how I
Hmm.
understand Jewish history. So, I mean, obviously, the golden age for the Jews was the Kingdom of David. And
Hmm.
at that time in history, and we're talking about like maybe 1000 BCE, BCE, this is after the Bronze Age collapse.
Hmm.
Israel, as a nation, as a people, and as depicted in the Bible, it's wealthy, it's open, it's cosmopolitan. And if you actually look at the history, it was also polytheistic. Monotheism is something that comes after the Babylon exile. But at that point, it was an extremely open, polytheistic, welcome society. But over time, because the Levant is such a contested territory, more and more empires start to invade Israel and carved up Israel into different territories. You had the Assyrians, you had the Babylonians, um, and ultimately it led to the Babylon exile. That's where most scholars believe the Bible was actually written, or most of it was redacted.
Hmm.
And so at this point in history, you have the elite who are deprived of their people and their land and their religion, right? Because Jerusalem is the holy city, right? And you're stuck in Babylon somewhere. And
Hmm.
so they now have to reimagine a religion in a way that allows them to stay united as a powerless diaspora that has no access to their God and to Holy Land. And with Cyrus the great Messiah in the Bible, he was
I think you know why people don't like America, because America has created more chaos in their countries. That's why they don't like they don't like it. Any comment about USA?
he sent the Jews back to Jerusalem to
Because they
build
are
the
homeless
temple,
and their
but it was under
families
Persian
are dying
patronage.
by the
And then after Persians came
Americans' hands.
the Greeks, the Ptolemies in Egypt, and then the Seleucid Empire. So throughout most of this history, the Jews were tools of empire. So what's happening is that they need to constantly reimagine their religion in a way that allows them to stay united against all this oppression. And that's why over time the religion became much more conservative, much more close-minded, and much more fanatical. And then, of course, you have the rise of Christianity. And Christianity was a great threat to the religion because a lot of Jews were absorbed into the religion. And now you
Hmm.
have basically a civil war going on in the Jewish religion. And now how do you maintain your religion under the threat of Christianity? And of course, Islam will rise later. And then and then you have certain traumatic events like the Spanish expulsion when Jews were asked either to convert or to leave Spain and go to the Ottoman Empire. And the trauma was most Jews chose to convert. And so throughout history, the Jews had a problem. It's like, how do you stay united? And what they discovered is the best way to stay united is by creating opposition against the dominant community.
Mm.
By doing things, by creating events that create differentiation, that basically cause the larger community to despise you. Um, and if we move fast forward to the modern age, you can argue that Zionism, the creation of Zionism, it's fueled by anti-Semitism because, at the end of the 20th century, sorry, at the end of the 19th century, when Theodore Herzl wrote his book, right, that
Hmm.
began Zionism, like everyone thought he was crazy. Like Jews were happy in Europe, they were happy in Britain, they're happy in America.
Hmm.
Why would they want to go to a desert in Israel? Like at
Hmm.
that time in history, this is around 1900, only about 3% of Jews even considered moving back.
I did not understand your message. You said USA say 7 in first, but now it's nothing. It's awkward truth. You need answer, but you need to make a sense. Oh, I did not understand your message. You believe no more than 7.
Back to the Holy Land. Okay, only 3%, and they're considering this. They're actually doing this, right? So now you have a problem. Like how do you get these Jews to go back to Israel? Because without Israel, because you don't have Jews going back to Israel, then the Israel project doesn't really work. You cannot reconstitute the Holy Land.
Hmm.
And so you make the argument that at that time they developed certain strategies that would ignite anti-Semitism around the world in order to force Jews to return to Jerusalem. And this is not a conspiracy theory, okay? There's a Jewish historian in Israel, Israeli historian, Ellen Pape, who's written many books
Hmm.
discussing the rise of Zionism and how it's fueled by terrorist acts against Jewish people that were false flags. This happened in Baghdad, where there's a very vibrant Jewish community, and they were happy in Baghdad.
So if anyone was living in the Israel, no one will be a white, bro. They will be like my color, little bit brown, brownie. Yeshua is in the Israel, not that white.
Baghdad, okay? But then you
Hmm.
had certain terrorist activities that forced them to leave Baghdad and return to Jerusalem. And
Okay, USA says 7 died with every 1 day of birth. Until now, no more.
and I mean, Ilan Pape will go as far as to say that there was certain
They are
collaboration
lying.
between
They are lying. It's all about the mentality. If you like tell your people you are dying, like he's an empire. Empires like empire. If they like USA's army has like died 500 people in the army, the morale will be down because they are like, how can I say it? They are empire. Like think about the Venezuela. They went there, no one died. They captured the president and they bring toward the USA. Like it was easy because they were empire. They did not fight. It's all about the moral. That's why they are not telling it how many people have died.
Zionists and the Nazis during World War II because the Nazis wanted to remove Jews from Germany and the Zionists wanted the Jews to return to Jerusalem. So it makes sense
Like
that they would collaborate in
like Israel is hiding their information because we know there are more deaths in the Israel, but they are not showing it. It's all about the moral. If they tell their people have died, these the numbers they will tell the numbers, the moral will go down.
in certain capacities.
That's
Right.
why they are not showing it.
Yes, and there's a Herzl attempted to win over Wilhelm II, I believe, and yeah, I think he said the famous quote of anti-Semites will be our best friends in a way because our interests are aligned. But this project, which is still under 80 years, I mean, modern Israel, they brag about being a tech society. It's the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. It's a modern democracy surrounded by theocracies. They've sort of sold themselves as secular, but as you're saying, embedded in that is a grander biblical Jewish project of bringing
Yeah.
about the Messiah, I guess, in their minds for the first time.
Yeah, well, like most societies, Israel is suffering from an identity crisis. So, as you say, there are places like Tel Aviv that is very open, very liberal, very cosmopolitan. That's really where the tech sector is based,
Hmm.
and they're very aligned with Reform Jews in America. So they're very liberal orientation, and they see Netanyahu as really Satan.
Mm.
But these past 10 years, it's really these extremist Jews, and many of them are 17 Frankists. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ideas of Sabbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank, but they really believe that through transgression, through committing evil, through doing sin, you can accelerate biblical prophecy
Hmm.
and create the Messianic age. And these figures are very dominant in Israel, but they're also very dominant in America and around the world. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure, but if you're interested, it's very important that you study Zebbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank, their philosophy, because their big philosophy is redemption through sin. That by
Hmm.
creating evil in the world, you can actually create the conditions for a better world. And so these are extremists embedded within the Netanyahu cabinet that want to drive the end times. So it's possible you have a million Israelis who are liberal, who are open-minded, but you only need about 10 to who are in positions of power and who are completely aligned in trying to achieve eschatology. Those 10 can cause a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And I think it's those 10 people, a very small minority of people, that's driving Israeli policy right now. Now, a lot of the reason why is because they have the mass support of Christian Zionists in the United States, as well as in Britain and around the world.
Hmm. Well, also just a data point here. So right now, actually, Peter Thiel, who is a Silicon Valley master of the universe, is giving a lecture series on the Antichrist. This is something that he referenced in some major interviews he did, one with the New York Times and others. He seems to associate the Antichrist with Greta Thunberg of all people, who's going to force us all to live in a eco-fascist village or something like that. That she's going to promise us safety and security, but also identity. So it's Greta as the Antichrist. I don't think it's any coincidence that Greta also, as we speak, is on a flotilla or is traveling to Gaza and has been maybe the most famous outspoken critic against Netanyahu and such. I think those ideas rhyme together. Now, most of Thiel's critics would say that he's the Antichrist because he sort of fits the image and he's bringing on the surveillance state and so on. And I sort of understand where they're coming from with that. But how does that idea of the Antichrist, anti-Messiah, false Messiah fit into this story?
Yeah, so the Antichrist is a very important concept in eschatology. There are different, there, and so
Guys, see, Trump. If we don't know, if we did not hit within 2 weeks, they could have had a nuclear weapon. When crazy people have a nuclear weapon, bad things happen, like Israel. Like these 2 weeks, you can understand about 2 weeks. Like they are saying from the 90s, Iran is like 2 weeks away from the nuclear bomb. From 90s, guys.
So,
When these two
the
weeks will
first
end,
thing to
guys.
understand about the Antichrist is if you look at different eschatologies, whether it's Orthodox or Christian or Jewish, it's not a person, it's
Hmm.
actually different people. So it's possible like you will have different antichrists emerge over time. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is that it's not really who the Antichrist is, it's what he
No.
does, right?
Hmm.
Because the idea of the Antichrist is that he creates a unified government that brings about the surveillance state, the mark of the beast, they call it, right? Like the mark of the beast, you can interpret as possibly a social security number,
Hmm.
but also a microchip in your head or whatever. But
Yeah.
something that marks you for life and allows the surveillance state to control you. Um, Different people have interpreted the Antichrist to mean the United Nations to create a world government. But whatever the eschatology, what they say is the Antichrist has to come first before the Messianic age. And so it would make sense, like the focus is now on the Antichrist, because once you create the Antichrist, then you create the conditions for the Messianic age. So what's really important for us to remember is that there's a script in place. And so we can actually predict how they'll behave.
Hmm.
Because for them, it's really important that you follow the script to the letter. They're just actors. God is the director. They're just actors, and they have to act out the script precisely in order to create the conditions for the Messianic age, the millennium they call it, the heaven on earth,
Hmm.
basically. I'm sorry if I'm being vague, but the Antichrist is interpreted differently in different eschatologies.
Well, when we think of the Antichrist as well, have you ever looked into the work of Joachim de Fiore? He's
Yeah,
a
God's.
Okay. Well, I'll set it up regardless. It's
Okay.
12th and 13th century monk, and he, in many ways, brought about the idea of not just a sort of linear progression in history, but a dispensation. And
Yeah.
so there's the
Okay.
age that is depicted in the Old Testament, that is the age of the Father, and it's harsh, brutal. There's death, there's punishment, there's destroying the world, and so on. And there's the age of the Son that is Jesus coming. And it is about a sacrifice of the Son in order to wash away the tears of that earlier age. And he was 12th, 13th century, so he was sort of living 1,000 years after Jesus, right smack dab in the high Middle Ages, I guess. And he saw even figures like Frederick II from the Holy Roman Empire, this German king, as a kind of antichrist figure. He was usurping the Pope, going to the Holy he was, I don't know, maybe the Trump of his age or Hitler of his age. I don't know what exactly. But what he thought is that a figure like that, who's challenging all authority, is necessary to bring on the third age, which he viewed as the age of the Holy Spirit. And it was in a weird way, and perhaps I'm projecting a reading on here, but in a funny way, it was almost a time without God, because the age of the Father is past, the patriarchy. The age of Jesus, when we were redeemed through suffering and sacrifice, that's also past. And now we're in an age of the Holy Spirit, in which the world will become a giant monastery. And we're going to spend all of our lives helping one another. You could say it's a giant hospital. That's actually, Nietzsche had a caustic line of socialism and liberalism. You want to create a gigantic hospital where we're all sick and we're just taking care of one another. Obviously, he didn't want anything like that. But that's sort of what he's describing. He's basically describing communism. I mean, the monastery is a communistic ideal. There's no competition. There's no antagonism. There's helping and sharing. And so he was sort of the I guess you could almost weirdly say the first Marxist or the first progressive, the first liberal in a way. And it shows how deep these ideas are. This notion of dispensationalism, we think it comes from the Scofield Bible or something. It's very deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the notion of a progress towards an end of history and an end of suffering, that's really deep in Western history. That's not just some new idea. It's embedded within us like a Russian nesting doll. But I guess what I was saying is that, there has to be an antichrist figure for this to happen. You have to sort of go through the night before there's a dawn. There has to be some antagonistic man of sin who is opposed to Christ, and in order for the Christ to arise. And so again, I think this sort of, creating.
Guys, why he's talking too much? We are here to listen to him. He has to question him, like he's preaching him right now. Oh my God, guys, first time I'm seeing a podcast like maybe 5 minutes or maybe 6 minutes he's talking.
Hatred, creating the problem so that you can have the solution. This also goes way back.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So yeah, as you say, the Scofield Bible, historians will tell you the Scofield Bible is what started Christian Zionism in the United States. But if you actually look at the history of Zionism, it actually started in England, and it was the secret societies, Freemasonry, that actually brought Christian Zionism into America. And some would even argue like Christian Zionism was embedded in the founding of America. I mean, and that's really why America rebelled against Britain in order to create a theocracy in order to achieve Christian Zionism. So Christian Zionism goes
the New
way
Jerusalem,
back.
yeah, as they
The New
described
Jerusalem.
it, the
America
city
is,
on the
is,
hill.
is,
Yeah.
is That's right, exactly. So all this goes way back. And Scofield Bible, I mean, you can also argue it was a psyop, right? The British created the Scofield Bible in order to spread Christian Zionism to the public, because Christian Zionism was embedded in these secret societies, but now you needed to popularize Christian Zionism. You did it for the Scofield Bible. So you can argue like they've been doing this for centuries. Like there are these hidden hands, secret societies that have been doing this for centuries because of this grand plan that they want to achieve. And I think you're absolutely right. Part of this grand plan is to create the Antichrist. I mean, like people say this online, and it's the weirdest thing. But Peter Thiel, an anagram of his name is the reptile, and that's like the strange coincidence. But I mean, like again, I mean, I don't want to go too deep into this, but if you look at the history of the secret societies in America and Britain, they do plan ahead. And what they often do is they raise children from birth, from the cradle, to achieve certain roles in the biblical prophecy. I mean, they are that organized. They are that evil. They will actually take children and basically nurture that child in order to achieve a certain role that they need in order to fulfill the script. And I mean, like if you just look at the world around the world today and you ask yourself, who is most likely to be the Antichrist? I mean, it's Peter Thiel. I mean, I hate to say this, but I mean, he has all the markings of the Antichrist. I mean, he wants to create a surveillance state through Palantir. He wants.
Okay, we find the Antichrist, Peter Thiel. Yeah, guys, he's a demon, but I don't think he will be an Antichrist. How the Peter Thiel can be an Antichrist?
Wants a return to theocracy, a world government. I mean, you have to ask yourself, what drives this guy? Like,
He wants
why
to
is he doing this?
overcome the human condition. I mean, he
Because he's not a normal person, guys, Peter Thiel. He is a wild person. If you go and learn about him, you will see how wild is he. Most of the things he controlled it. Because of the how can I say it? He purchased the first shares of Facebook. Like he was the owner of the Facebook. And there is more these type of companies that Peter Thiel has controlled it. And he's not a normal person, guys. Like he's a dark person. He stayed behind always. He never is front.
As he said, I mean, that's what he meant by should humanity survive. I don't think he wants us all to, die off from starvation or war or something. I think he wants to overcome the human condition by merging with machines. That, we became cyborgs when we had artificial hearts and limbs, and we're now connected with computers with through our hand, the phone, and this is just the beginning of overcoming the mortal coil. I think that's exactly how he thinks. So it's a weird and he compared it where it was very funny because that type of thinking, techno-futurism, the singularity, post-humanism, etc., you associate that with extreme liberals perhaps, or atheist, no doubt, people who
Guys, also Zionists think that there will be a time they can create a human. Yes, guys, is why. That's why, guys. They can create a human. Like from nothing. They will. But it will be not from nothing, but from something they will create a human, guys. It still is wild. The science will do like it will be so like far that they can create a human.
don't care for gods
I
and
don't have
church
a
and all that
word
kind
to
of stuff.
say it.
It's the opposite with Peter Thiel. He seems to be, he called himself orthodox in that interview. He has this interpretation or kind of skew of the Christian message, where with Christianity we sort of perfect our soul, and we're not bogged down by quotidian things. We're kind of moving towards God, and he sees that as a metaphor or analogy of moving towards the perfection of the machine, of pure logic, of artificial intelligence, of living forever, et cetera, et cetera. So in some ways, Peter Thiel is the ultimate Christian. I mean, or anti-Christian, so to speak. He's offering this sort of, he's not countering Christianity or saying it's all bunk and superstition and lies. He's instead saying, no, this is the real Christianity. This is what God has in store for you, merging with the machine.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. So I'll just go over some of his biographic details.
Mhm.
And I mean, he was
Guys, literally in this podcast, this right person who is Alexandra, I have no idea who is he. Like all the time he is talking. Right. I have no idea. Like I'm here to hear him or him. What the heck? Once he need to stop talking, guys. Once.
a chess prodigy. Like he was fantastic at chess. Went to Stanford, where he was mentored by René Girard.
Mhm.
This very influential French philosopher who was very close with the Catholic Church. I would be surprised if he has a Jesuit background, if he was part of these secret societies of the Jesuits. Went to Stanford Law School, and then he joined PayPal. Now,
Mhm.
the PayPal mafia. Like I don't think enough people have focused on the PayPal mafia because just go back to the founding of the internet. Anyone could tell you at that time that whoever controlled e-payments, whoever can control commerce on the internet, these people would eventually come to control the internet. So my
Yeah.
question then is, how did Peter Thiel get associated with these people, and how did he become one of the top players in these people, along with Elon Musk and David
Mhm.
Sachs? Like it seems almost as though they were a secret society unto themselves, and that the people in power put them there to achieve certain purposes. But I mean, he was either extremely lucky or it was planned from the beginning. And after PayPal, he was an early investor in Facebook,
Hmm.
and he founded Palantir with his college roommate Alex Karp, and 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 now he was an early supporter of Donald Trump. He was an early supporter of JD Vance. You can argue like JD Vance's career would not have been possible without Peter Thiel. So
Oh,
I mean,
clearly.
this guy, this guy is the most brilliant man in the world. If you actually listen to his interviews, if you actually read his writings, he doesn't.
Guys, this guy is wild. Peter Thiel is wild. You have to search about him and you have to learn it because he's controlling, like, I think maybe he's controlling USA. I can say it from the behind
He doesn't come across as the most
because he's the big supporter of Donald Trump.
brilliant man in the world, or powerful factions are supporting him,
Yeah.
and he's just the front man for these powerful factions, which I think is the most likely scenario. And then you ask yourself, was this planned from birth? Who is his family? I mean,
Hmm.
we know very little about his family, and what? Why is this happening? Why does he believe what he does? Because he's unique in that Silicon Valley ecosystem. You know, like look someone like Jeff Bezos. I mean, like he's a very typical Silicon Valley billionaire, right? I mean, like
Hmm.
I mean, divorce. He's trying to shoot rockets into space like a phallus symbol. So you can sort of see like
Right.
his he's trying to satisfy his own ego, his own limitations. Whereas Peter Thiel, clearly he's a man on a mission. I mean, like,
Yeah.
and he's written quite a lot about the convergence of theology and artificial intelligence, right? Transhumanism, as you call it. So it's almost like they have a plan in motion, and Peter Thiel is just a puppet put in front of us in order to seduce.
What the heck? He thinks Peter Thiel is a puppet. Oh my god! I thought he's not puppet. He's like Elon Musk is a living legend. No, bro, he's a demon. Did you did you saw his esteem fight? He was asking his team that I want to China. I oh my god.
Us into this plan. It's very hard to explain how he got to where he is and why he believes what he does. I mean,
Yeah.
he's unique. That's ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. And it's very interesting because he was almost a
Now he will be talking like shit, guys. He will be fine.
about politics before he was about technology. And
Exactly.
Was he? Bro, he was asking that I want to go there, guys. How dumb you can be. How dumb you can be. Like if someone is saying it, I want to be there, he want to do it, these things. Maybe he is doing it behind somewhere else. But he wanted more things. Maybe want to I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it. Maybe want to eat it. Eat it. Now understand what he want to eat it.
when he was an undergrad, he actually wrote a book. I think it was called The Diversity Myth, which was pretty standard anti DEI kind of stuff. But interesting that he was doing that. He actually worked with William Bennett for a time before PayPal, actually. So he was already involved with neoconservative politics before he became a billionaire. It was almost like he had the ideas ready to go and he was well connected, but the one thing he was missing was $1 billion. So he had to do a little detour. And yeah, even the whole PayPal bringing on Musk and so on, there is something haphazard about it. And I don't want to be resentful or try to take anything away from them, but when you look at the company, particularly Musk contributions to PayPal, it does seem dubious, to be honest, or at the very least lucky. And it is interesting that both of these figures were chosen, if we're to assume that the sort of theological Peter
Yeah, bro. If you are guilty, still you are guilty. When you had something in your heart, like a bad thing, you wanted to do it. I asked to go guilty, but I'm not guilty. Yeah, you are guilty, bro. I think there are so many things are hidden still in the Steam files. Maybe Elon Musk has went there. Maybe they did not show it.
Thiel, and then also Elon Musk, who is constantly wanting to save the world. You know, when he was a Reddit liberal, he was talking about how, you know, there's a 40% chance that we can stave off global warming now that we have electric vehicles and so on. Then he sort of moves off that, and, you know, we need to desperately elect Donald Trump in order to save America and save free speech. That they want to kill you now is what he's saying. So they both sort of.
And he also has helped the Donald Trump to reach where is he right now. You know? What do you think?
Have they're different figures, but they both sort of have messianic callings. And and it is interesting to compare them to just sort of a dude like Jeff Bezos, who's just a good businessman and, you know, loves hanging out with chicks. It's much more understandable than these other figures who are sort of asexual, both of them in different weird ways. But okay, let me change the. So, do you want to tie up any bows on?
Trump was. Oh my god, bro, you are not in this one. There are new Steam files, bro. Did you see it? Like I'm right now, I'm live on YouTube. If I was not, I will show you. Literally, I will show you. A girl, like the Donald Trump was trying to put his main part in a girl's mouth. A girl, he, like how can I say it in English? Like he bite him. He bite his main point, guys. I'm not saying it. There are Steam files, new. You can see it, and you will find out. Oh, it's shocking. I have no idea where you are living from.
On the Middle East situation in the terms of the immediate future, or you actually have a lecture on World War III and how, you know, the Middle East, China, even certainly the conflict in Europe over Ukraine, how these pieces might fit together.
Yeah, I mean, I think World War III will be mainly centered in the Levant and Anatolia. That's part of all the eschatology, the biblical prophecy. And so I see certain events playing out. I see the Israelis basically continuing to do what they do in Gaza, but at a much more accelerated pace. I see the Israelis, or I'm not gonna say the Israelis.
I have no idea which kind of evidence you want to see. But no evidence. Bro, now I'm not going to say anything, bro. You are like you are not living in this planet.
But the Al-Aqsa Mosque will be blown up. Who, why, we won't know, but it'll be blown up. It'll be a shock to the world, which is the intention. I see.
Or maybe your brain is shut. I think you have to open, bro.
a continuation of the conflict between Israel and Iran. I see the United States sending in ground troops against Iran. Iran will close
Hmm.
off the Strait of Hormuz, which will just create an economic catastrophe all around the world. It's going to severely impact the Southeast Asian economies of China, Japan, and South Korea. It's gonna be a mess. But
Hmm.
again, it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the script in order to achieve the Messianic age. I think that's what's gonna happen in the Middle East.
Is this going to be the downfall of the United States in this war? Because I mean, we benefited tremendously from the two world wars in the 20th century,
Yeah.
and we joined both late. We joined both arguably reluctantly, and we were on. It was clear which side we were going to join, though, and we were supporting them. But America is a very different country now. It's hard to imagine Zoomers strapping on helmets and going off to Iran to go to war. It's hard to imagine both the left and the right even acting as good soldiers on the home front in a conflict. I wonder if the next big one is the last one for Uncle Sam.
That's the intention, actually.
Hmm.
So the eschatology requires Israel to achieve the Greater Israel Project, basically the Pax Judaica
Hmm.
for Israel to be the dominant power in the Middle East. And so you need to get rid of the United States somehow, right? You need to remove the United States from the equation because the United States does not figure into the eschatology. And the best way to do that
Hmm.
is to provoke an American ground invasion of Iran because that thing will be so unpopular as to ignite a civil war in the United States, which will destabilize the United States and prevent the United States from interfering in Middle East affairs, right? That I think is part of the eschatology. Because if you look at all the eschatologies, whether
Oh,
it's
interesting.
Orthodox, Catholic, Jewish, or Christian, you look at all the eschatologies, the United States will descend into civil war. That's what they all believe. That's what they all say. So and that's important for what's about to unfold in the Middle East because the United States is the Pax Americana. It's going to prevent the war from spiraling out of control. But you need the war to spiral out of control in order to create the conditions for the Messianic
Right.
age. So you need to remove the United States from the equation. The best way to do that is for the United States to suffer a humiliating defeat in Iran. And then this will provoke civil conflict in America. And now America is no longer part of the equation.
Israel's in a golden cage with the United States. We give Israel billions. At the same time, Donald Trump constrains Bibi Netanyahu. Surely Kamala Harris would have pushed back on his actions much more than Trump if she were elected, and any Democrat would, and many other Republicans would. So
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Because in USA, if it's a light, if it's a left side or if it's the right side, they both are at the same position. They always support. We know who they support, guys, and we saw it in the Joe Biden expedition. Not there. When Joe Biden was the prime president. I don't live in that.
it's a sort of golden cage. It's been wonderful for quite some time. They benefited from
Yeah.
it, but everything has to come to an end. So let's talk about the end of my country where I'm living right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Well, first off, so what was it like? So you moved to Canada to Toronto when you were 6. You said
That's
so.
right.
You don't. I guess it would be hard to remember a whole lot about China before you immigrated. Maybe you have flashes, postcard
Right.
images of what China was like. What was it? What was it like to be a Chinese immigrant kid in Canada? Like, were you did you feel like you were in paradise, or did you?
In, in, in these important, yeah, it's very
maybe feel like you're an outsider, or
Well,
sort of both?
my family was very poor.
Hmm.
And so we lived in poor neighborhoods where there was these mixing of the different ethnicities, but obviously these are not really educated people. They're not cosmopolitan, and so I suffered a lot of racial abuse when I was younger,
Hmm.
and that's what sort of compelled me to want to leave Canada and apply to the United States because I wanted to just get out of Canada. It's such a traumatic experience.
Mm.
Quite honestly, sometimes when I go back to Canada, I still find it traumatic because it will stir up these childhood memories of racial abuse
Wow.
and all that. But I mean, like at the same time, I'm very thankful um, for Canada because grow up in the 80s and 90s was really the best time to be alive. Nowadays, if you're a young person in Canada, it kind of sucks.
Hmm.
The country society has changed a lot, but in the 80s and the 90s when I grew up, you were allowed a lot of personal freedom. You could go out and explore the streets.
Hmm.
You could take risks. You could fail. It was not a big deal. It was all part of the process of growing up. I took my two kids, two boys back to Canada over the summer, and like, nowadays they expect you as a parent to have your child on a leash, like literally a leash, to like make sure the child is always within arm's reach.
Right.
And I was like, but if I did that, then how will my child ever learn resilience? How will my child ever learn empathy, independence,
Hmm.
uh, risk taking, creativity, imagination? And so I was very fortunate to have grown up in the 80s rather than today. So I'm thankful for what Canada provided. At the same time, I did suffer a lot of racial abuse while growing up in Canada.
I understand that completely. Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, and I was born in Massachusetts, but I moved to Texas, and we
Okay,
would ride during the summer. We would ride our bikes from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. and
that's
maybe
exactly right.
stop go to mom for lunch and something like that. But yeah, we would play a baseball game, play a football game, go on an adventure. Someone would get his knee skinned and hurt and so on. But to these things. But let's talk about America and the Civil War. So obviously we've had one of these before in the 1860s, and it led to hundreds of thousands of deaths. Listening to your lecture on the coming Civil War, the 1860s is a precedent, but you seem to not think that something like that is going to happen. That was a regional conflict over slavery
Yep.
and secession. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a war of secession in many ways. I think the South did want
Yeah.
to break away, and the North wanted to maintain this empire. But what do you think the upcoming Civil War is going to be like? Because the idea of a civil war is sort of in the air. Marjorie Taylor Greene has said we need a divorce, a national divorce, a kind of velvet divorce. We'll just agree to disagree. But how exactly that would shake out remains to be seen. Red state, blue state, they're fairly consistent, but there's a lot of, Illinois is a massive dot of blue, Chicago in a red state, for example.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
live in Montana now. I know exactly how Montanans would go. Very deep
Right.
red out here with the
Why, guys, he's always talking. He's talking. I have no idea. Why you call someone like he's a master, he's a professor. Okay, if you call the some kind of professor, you like I accept. Like if I'm the calling someone, I will like let him talk. I will ask a question and I will be shut up. In this whole video, this person is always is talking. I have no idea.
not a lot of blue anywhere.
Okay, Professor Jiang said that in USA there is a possibility their civil war is going to happen. It's a big thing. It will happen because of this war. The chaos will grow in the USA and the civil war will happen. And he have to stop talking. Like, please. It's like
But
enough.
the president benefit act jeopardize be indicted, wouldn't let Montana go if it wanted to do so peacefully. You're in a so anyway, and then B, what's really causing this. But first we'll stick with the pragmatic. How do you think this might shake out?
Okay, so I think it will not be a war. As you say, like in that there'll be two sides, you have two armies, and they fight each other because,
Hmm.
I mean, like that's not what's going to happen. But what we will see is in the first, well, I think the Civil War might last 20, 30 years.
Mm.
And I think what will emerge at the end of the Civil War.
What the 20, 30 years? This will be terrifying, guys. It's like if they stay like 35 years, that it will be
What
like in chaos.
is a Christian
I'm
theocracy
hoping it will not
where the
happen.
United States embraces Christian nationalism as a defining ideology.
We just
And
can
that Christian
hope.
Zionism, Christian nationalism sort of
Hmm.
like overrides the Constitution. Okay, that's what I think will be the most likely scenario in 20,
If
30
it's
years'
true,
time.
Wow.
And to get to that point, you have different stages. Okay, in the first stage, you'll see an acceleration of political violence. So public figures are targeted. You'll see massive public unrest. So going back to the LA riots, right?
Hmm.
Against ICE raids, right? You will see an acceleration of the police state, the National Guard in different cities. Um, then the first stage, I think, ends when there's a defining political moment that radically transforms the political landscape of this country. And I think that will be Trump's third term. I think Trump
Mm.
intends to continue to be president. How he will do so, I don't know, right? I mean, it's possible he runs his son, Don Jr., and he's the vice president. Who knows, okay? But I think his intention is to have a third term. And I think that from all his actions, you can interpret it as he wants to stay in there for as long as he can, right?
Hmm.
It's possible he dies out of office, but I think, if he stays healthy, then he's going to want that third term. If he does that and he succeeds, and I think he will likely succeed because he'll cheat in 2028, you will have massive revolt in the country. You
Mm.
have cities like New York, Boston, who are open defiance. Some states like California, they might even choose to secede from the union. And now you're going to have a massive conflict throughout the nation. Most of the country will actually not be affected. If you're just living in a
Mm.
suburb in Connecticut, this may not even affect you. But if you're living in a city of New York City or Boston,
Hmm.
you have these massive sieges, okay? Then as in the third stage, then I think you'll have like just a breakdown of the United States, and different states will fight against each other. Different cities will fight against each other. But eventually, I think the red states, like Texas, maybe, they will become dominant, and they will eventually reform the United States of America.
Mm.
Honestly, this is no different from what happened during Roman times, during the Roman Empire. I mean, you had a constant process of civil war, and a great leader emerges, and then you have imperial consolidation, and then like maybe 20 years, 30 years later, civil war again. So it's a constant cycle. And quite honestly, I think that's what's gonna happen in the United States. At the same time, and this is what's really interesting is even as this civil war gets worse and worse, America will continue to expand in the Americas. America's going to claim territory in Canada, in
Hmm.
Mexico, in South America. I think that is what I imagine to happen over the next 20, 30 years to America. And again, this fits into the eschatology because America needs to be isolated from the rest of the world because the rest of the world needs to achieve the second coming. And so the Civil War, this imperial expansion throughout the Americas, it will distract America long enough for the events to unfold in the Middle East in the way that they should.
Wow.
So yeah.
And so you think
And
it's a oh, go ahead, finish your thought.
yeah, and also I think like one of the hidden hands in all the Civil War will be the Catholic Church. I think the Catholic Church is a much more dominant player
Hmm.
underlying American politics than people imagine it to play. I mean, look, I mean, JD Vance, I mean, like he will be, regardless of what happens. I mean, he will be a very dominant political player in the next few decades, and he's a very young person, right?
Hmm.
The new pope of the Catholic Church is American. So I would not be surprised if there are certain institutional elements within the Catholic Church, maybe Opus Dei, the Jesuits, who
Hmm.
see a civil war as opportunity to gain power in America. Because remember, before the Anglo-American Empire, it was a Catholic empire. And so how do you reconstitute the millennium? How do we reconstitute the Catholic Empire? Well, you either bring America into the fold, you co-op America, or you cause America to disintegrate, right? So
Yeah.
so so I think the Catholic Church will also play a very important role in the coming decades.
And so you see the Civil War as left versus right, in effect. I mean, the first Civil War was regional. You couldn't, well, there was a little bit of slavery in Massachusetts, but you couldn't have a massive Gone with the Wind style plantation in Connecticut or something like that. There was regional differences of geography that created different economies that were interconnected, of course, but were different. And this led to a regional conflict, but it wasn't left versus right. Exactly. You had different types of people on both sides. But you think that the red state, blue state divide, left versus right, or right versus left, in this case, that is going to be it. And we're a hyper polarized society. This is how.
Left and right are like a creation of making people controlled by friends. Like in America, everybody is thinking about left and right. They never think like who is controlling them both sides. I think the both sides are controlled by same people, but they don't see it because they are like, oh, I have to go this way, I have to go this way. Then they are fighting each other. They are not thinking about what the heck is happening. Why always they do same thing when when they have a power. Like as an outsider, I'm seeing the same thing. Okay, they both are doing same thing. How? Like if someone's mentality is like different, they will do different things, but they do never do different things. They do same things always. They just like show Americans like, oh, we are doing a different thing. We are different. We are left. Right will say, I'm right. I'm different. No. If you like, if you like, think about them. They are same. They are same thing. They never think about the America. I don't think so. Because people are dying in America. They don't have a thing to live, and still they are like searching for country. Oh, like that. Like this. Oh, which country we need to attack? Oh, this one. Let's go. We got a petrol. Let's go. What the heck? They never see, oh, what the heck is happening in my country? There is no one can like.
We think now. Everything's coded as Republican and Democrat. If we're going to break down, those are going to be the fault lines.
I think on the surface that's a fault line, but I don't think that's what happened. I think the larger conflict is between establishment interests versus emerging elite interests, right? So the example is Donald Trump, right? So in 2020, the establishment elite coalesced together to get rid of Donald Trump,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like $6 billion were spent on that election. The entire elite apparatus, the media, the financial sector, the deep state, CIA, they all banded together to get rid of Donald Trump. And back to the Peter Thiel. Remember, what was interesting is 2016, 2024, Peter Thiel was a vocal supporter of Donald Trump. But in 2020, he withdrew his support for Donald Trump. So it seemed like at that time the entire establishment got together and decided we need to get rid of this guy because he's a liability to imperial interests. And then, Joe Biden came in and they recognized that Joe Biden's actually even worse for imperial interests, and that's why they let Donald Trump to come back in. But obviously, if you're Donald Trump, you're kind of pissed off about what happened in 2020.
Sure.
I mean, so I think, Project 2025, the underlying hidden agenda of Project 2025 is to start attacking the basic infrastructure of the establishment. And I think that is what's really driving the Civil War. These elites come, Peter Turchin, the historian, has a term for this: elite overproduction. You have limited positions of power and status. You have too many elites. They all want these positions of power, so they're going to have to fight it amongst themselves. So I think left-right is what we see, but behind it are these deep institutional elements.
Yeah, I'm talking about same thing. Like in front, you can see like left and right, but they are behind. They are controlling both of them. You're not seeing that.
These interests that are in conflict with each other, and left, right are basically puppets or tools. I mean, you can make the argument Antifa. I mean, it's not an organic organization. I mean, like it's almost like a FBI undercover organization. And then on the right, you have Patriot Front or whatever they call it. But it's so blatant. I mean, what they're doing now. Now, why would you do that? Why would you incubate these organizations? Well, I mean, you would incubate these organizations if you want to activate them for civil unrest. So I think in the first stage it'll be establishment versus these Trump-aligned conservative factions that are trying to overthrow the establishment, including Chris Zionists, including the Mormons, including the Catholics. Okay, but eventually you reach a point where the establishment is overthrown, and now these factions fight amongst themselves. So. But I think what's really important for us to understand is the left is not a factor in the Civil War. The left is extremely disorganized. I mean, these past few decades, the left has done a tremendous job in consuming itself, in destroying itself through woke ideology, through its alignment with the establishment, through its through COVID lockdowns. I mean, like the left has just absolutely no credibility in America nowadays. It just doesn't. I mean, and quite honestly, the left, they're not going to die for what they believe because they don't believe in anything. You look at people like Obama, AOC, right? Do they stand for anything? I don't think they stand for anything. All they stand for really is like playing the game, moving up. But Obama's not going to die for what he believes in, whereas people on the right will die for what they believe in. So I don't think the left is a factor in the Civil War.
Yeah. Well, there's also something that I've noticed is that the first 9 months or so of the Trump second term, it's been this attack on the establishment, but without replacing it with anything. Elon Musk came out with a chainsaw and said, we're destroying bureaucracy. Now, I don't think he really destroyed all that much, but it was an attack on USAID. It was attack on long-term bureaucrats, etc. Even something as trivial as getting Jimmy Kimmel fired. I don't know if you heard this. He's this very boring and stupid a late night talk show. Well, previously in American history, late night was actually a very unifying thing. Johnny Carson spoke to all Americans, middle class, the wealthy elite, even working class people. They all liked Johnny Carson, and they thought the celebrities he talked to were their friends. And Bob Uecker would come on and talk about baseball. It was very unifying and homey. And Jimmy Kimmel is nothing like that. He's polarized himself, and he's boring. But even here, you have an attack on the institution. This thing is falling. Let's just push it over the edge. But at least from my standpoint, there's no institution that's replacing it. There's not a Trump USAID, or there's not like a new vision of government that's replacing what they're tearing down. There's not a Trump late night host who brings everyone together. They're in the stage of liquidating all of these institutions that are actually 20th century institutions. They're quite old, but they've all been coded liberal. Attack the universities. Let's bring Harvard is going to be neutered. They're going to pay us money. We might even take them down. They're getting rid of these things, but they're not presenting hegemonic institutions in their place. At least that's my perception. So, I guess what you're saying is that at the end of it, it's going to be Christian nationalism. It's going to be just full on, it's in the Bible, 10 Commandments, baby, bake me the cake, convert the gays. I mean, I guess it makes sense in the sense that I don't think Trumpism has any core belief other than Trump himself. And he is going to die at some point, maybe soon.
Yes.
And something has to fill that void. There's no other personality that can fill it. Maybe some sort of hardcore thing, but something that resonates with American history. And to be frank, Puritanism, biblical fundamentalism, that resonates with American history from my perspective, unfortunately. Exactly. But you have to find something to fill that void.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I will say is that if you're a Christian Zionist, you believe like the media, the judiciary, and the universities are fundamentally liberal institutions. And therefore, you have to burn down these institutions if you are to spread your Christian nationalist ideology. Once you have the ideology in place, and these institutions will come about that support the ideology. So I don't think the intention is to replace the universities. I think the intention is just to burn them down, because like, why do you need universities? They're just propaganda machines for the liberal elite. I mean,
at this
why
point,
do you need Harvard?
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, like why? Just burn them down. Like who needs them, right?
That's why I'm just speaking for myself. I am ambivalent about a lot of this because I don't like the destructiveness, and I feel like so much of the destructiveness is very stupid. It's people who resent the idea of Harvard. I think that the idea of 20 people gathering at a table and discussing Milton is a great thing and a necessary thing for building the elite. And I feel like there is a sort of stupid resentment against the idea of education itself. That being said, it's very hard for me to defend Jimmy Kimmel or defend Harvard as it is at this moment.
It does not matter right now because the Christian Zionists have more power, and with the Jew Zionists, they are like controlling everything. They think they are doing a Jesus work. You have to like understand. You, bro, you have nothing. You are just saying these people are stupid. I think you are stupid right now. You are like, just saying it, he's stupid. It's like believing that I am stupid because I'm not understanding them.
Reluctantly agree with.
Like, I'm talking about you. Like, you are saying they are stupid, and it's like it's backfiring for you.
With the Trump movement, that these institutions have gone haywire. So
look,
yeah.
I mean, look, it's these liberal institutions that created Trump. Okay. I mean, like, it's very important we understand this. Trump is not a self-creation. He is a creation of the liberal institutions that hate him. Okay. So in 2016, Trump became popular because he was being the anti-Obama. I mean, he was this populist hero, right? Why? Because the Obama.
Because the Trump was got a power because of he want to make America great again. No, now he's not making America great. He's like, he's destroying it. Not talking about you, but the question that is bad. Yeah, I know. I'm not saying that you are saying I'm stupid. You are saying these are stupid because they are saying that college and universities are useless thing. I think university and college are to control people, like make them slave, the perfect slave. They never think like they are slave. Because if you talk with someone who have studied in the university, they will think we are doing something great. But no, they are slave. Just they have no idea they are slave.
Years create this tremendous inequality between the haves and the have-nots. And
Like if you need a perfect slave, like send them university and these institutes. Yeah, yeah, you will get a perfect slave. They will have no idea they are slave. Imagine how many. First of all, why do we need a lawyers? Yeah, I can say doctors and engineers. We can make it something. We do something else. There will be no university, but still there will be doctors. In the history, they were. Without the university, they were.
I mean, people were just sick of this. Oh, remember, in 2008, Obama came in promising that he would clean up Wall Street. And all he did was bail out Wall Street and punish
In this
these
time
millions of
period,
homeowners who lost
getting
their
a
homes
degree
because
is a
of Wall
useless thing.
Street shenanigans, because of Wall Street corruption.
Right now, I'm seeing some people, they have a degree, they are useless. And maybe like you, maybe you have a degree. That's why you are talking about degree is a perfect thing.
And Trump promised that I will fix this. Okay, when he came into office, he was sabotaged from day one by the liberal elite. Right, the media was spreading this Russian hoax that that Trump was a Putin spy, and you had the you had certain individuals in Trump's cabinet that were in open rebellion
Yeah,
against
this one,
Trump,
call
who
it the
refused to
scam.
take Trump's orders. In fact, you had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, say very proudly, I called the Chinese and said, "Don't worry about this guy. We're not taking orders from this guy. He's a loose cannon. Don't worry about it."
Hmm.
Okay, that's treason. You don't do that. Okay, that's basically treason. But he said it with relish. Okay, the
Hmm.
entire media.
It's all about the boomers. Boomers says like the college is a perfect thing to go. But the young population know it. These are right now, these are useless. It's like making a slave, like creating a slave for for elite.
Establishment went against Trump, and then in 2020, as I mentioned, the entire establishment spent $6 billion to get rid of this guy. All right, and that should have been it. But then you had January 6th, which was, I mean, arguably a federal operation. But then after that, you had the liberals try to bankrupt Trump. I mean, there were six civil suits against Trump. They were trying to throw him in prison. You had these judges in Colorado who are trying to take him out, like out of the ballot. You had this raid on Mar-a-Lago for who knows why, but the FBI raided him. So I mean, the media, the liberals were obsessed with this guy, and because Trump was being persecuted by the liberal elite, the institutional elite, it made him a folk hero in
Yeah.
America. Americans don't like that when the government bullies someone. It goes against the very soul of America to be bullied by the government like that. When Trump was being bullied throughout all this time, and so you have this former president who is a billionaire, and now he's like a folk hero. He's the underdog. And now that he's swept back into office, he has a popular mandate to bulldoze like all these institutions that bullied him
Hmm.
past 8 years. So I'm sorry to say this, but these liberal institutions did this to themselves. At
Mm.
no point was there any self-reflection. At no point did anyone say, you know what, we're going too far. We're calling him Hitler, but are we creating Hitler?
Yeah.
Like remember, because Hitler would not have been Hitler without the popular mandate that he had, because of these like decades of frustration among the German people.
Yes, I agree with uh, so much of what you've said. But he's like a wrecking ball. I mean, it's
That's the intention.
fascinating. That's the intention. So it's a force higher than these liberal institutions. It's not like the dean of a Harvard college is truly like the elite in the sense of
Yeah, that's right.
the man, calling the shots. And so I think there were so many things with Trump, as you said, when it was perceived that he was being persecuted by Jack Smith. That's
When did he say Trump is a Hitler? Only person. When did he say? Like he was saying that how Hitler was created, like everything was happening with the Trump. Like there was a chance Trump can be a Hitler.
when he became popular again and they threw Ron DeSantis out the window. Also, January 6th, you saw all of these billionaires, maybe they're sort of former liberal billionaires, counter billionaires, you could say, who came on side because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, even if they ultimately support Israel, they are more likely to.
In Germany, when Hitler was there, the population of Germany, like they went toward the Hitler, like they supported Hitler. It was same as the Trump. The majority of USA they supported Trump. I was seeing it at that time. Saw the election.
Push back. And I do think that there was a certain elite that wanted Trump. Despite all of it, they thought that he was going to be the one that would allow Israel to pursue its dreams in the most expansive way possible, excuse me. And thus Trump isn't this counter elite. He isn't the anti-war president.
Yep.
He's actually brought in by certain elites that want this. And yeah, in terms of what he creates, it's not even necessarily his fault, just to be fair. But in terms of what he creates, the vibe that he brings to the country, there's no doubt the Charlie Kirk assassination as an example, we do seem to be getting closer to street level kinetic violence day by day. I don't think you think this. I don't think any reasonable person thinks that we're not going to see another one of these things like Charlie Kirk, someone who is deeply politically coded and symbolic.
No, guys, I want to tell you in this time there's no about the oil. It's a religious war. You have to like be on the same page, guys. But stop watching these news like news platforms. Stop watching news platforms. Come on.
Getting killed, getting roughed up at the very least, being violently attacked in broad daylight for the simple reason of sending a message. And the message, the violence there becoming so much more expansive on social media. Millions of people are seeing it and feeling it right then and there. And thus, Trump sort of brings in the Civil War. Maybe to be overly fair here, maybe not, well, I think he did urge people to do J6 and whatever, but to be fair, overly fair, not really to the fault of his own, but just the sort of energy that he brings to the table. He brings an energy of violence. I think a lot of liberals have gotten in trouble for saying this, but I think they're actually right about that. And we're not going to cool things down. We're not going to go back to normal. We're not going to elect Mitt Romney or something like that, where we can just sort of tune out of politics, maybe make fun of the president here and there. With Trump, the general social mood of the country is more existential.
I think with this Charlie Kirk shooting, America has another 9/11 moment. I think it's a watershed moment, and I think you're absolutely right in that there's no going back after this. It's opened a Pandora's box. And remember, after 9/11, two major things that happened were the Patriot Act, the beginning of the surveillance state, and then these wars in the Middle East. And I think that with this Charlie Cook shooting,
Kirk, yeah.
you'll have both. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have both. I mean,
Charlie Cook. It's like I'm saying it some words.
you're gonna have Palantir become dominant. I mean, they've been planning this for like a long time, right?
Hmm.
And that the infrastructure for all this, and I'm sure there are lots of legislation already, written that they're going to put the ram through over the next few months in like in memory of Charlie Kirk, okay, to
Hmm.
celebrate his memory, right? They'll probably call it the Charlie Kirk Act or whatever, the Patriot Act 2 or something. And I also think this will be the impetus for America's invasion of Iran. Somehow they're going to connect it to, and because like after 9/11 they invaded Iraq, and like there was absolutely no connection between 9/11 and Iraq.
Guys, you have to understand right now the USA isn't attacking. It's someone else, like Israel, because they are controlling Donald Trump. The Esteem files, why they are releasing like slowly, because they have to control the Donald Trump, because the action they want to make, Trump need to make it, they are controlling from the Esteem file. I think they are more Esteem file for the Donald Trump. I think they are more crazy files. If we saw it, like everyone will wake up. They don't need to wake up people. They just like Donald Trump will be like, oh, don't send it. Don't send it. No. No. It's enough. I don't want to see more. It's like that. Like if you see more, I think it will be wild. All Americans will start fighting against Donald Trump. They will not never support Donald Trump.
In fact,
Right.
Iraq was a determined enemy of Al Qaeda, but they invaded Iraq anyway. So I think this is a watershed moment, and I don't think you can overestimate the impact on the American psyche of what happened.
They're already doing military recruitment on Charlie Kirk's behalf. Charlie Kirk
exactly
never
right.
served in the military. I mean,
Right.
for what it's
That's
worth.
right. And Charlie Kirk, by the way, was the one who vocally told Trump not to bomb Iran. He told Trump, we have actually no business bombing Iran. The American people don't want a war in the Middle East. I mean, Charlie Kirk was one of the good guys in Trump's orbit. I mean, he was one of the restraining forces, right?
Sure, I'll grant you that, but I do agree that he no doubt went and told Donald Trump that because he was getting pressure from his sort of anti-war base. And the amazing thing, but maybe even predictive thing, is that they're going to use him to inspire a war. One thing that I've
Exactly.
also noticed here is that I think so many liberals want the establishment to push back. The media does push back to some degree, to the degree they can. But they almost want, these governors to stand up to Trump, and they have to some Pritzker and Newsom to some degree. But they're almost waiting for some establishmentarian wasp in a tweed coat to just come out of the woodwork and say, no, we don't do that here. And I think what I've seen in Donald Trump's second term is that doesn't actually exist.
Yep.
They are going to send the National Guard into California. Tim Cook, Mr. Liberal Apple, left-coded company. What are they going to do? They're going to come to the White House and kiss Trump's ass. The mainstream media, are they going to push back on behalf of free speech and democracy? No, they're actually going to fire the people whom Trump hates. There's nothing coming from the so-called establishment because that's not really the establishment. These long-standing institutions, the New York Times, ABC, Harvard University, all these are 20th century institutions that have now been coded as liberal, and people want them to push back. But they just won't and they can't because they're not an actual elite. they're a sort of like sub elite of something else
Yeah.
that might actually like what Donald Trump is doing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the liberal elite is the professional managerial class, right? They're not the
Right.
owners. They're
Right.
not the bosses. It's the deep state, that are the bosses, and we'll never know who they are. One thing I will say is, remember during the Trump first term, the liberal elite basically sold their soul to the deep state, right?
Hmm.
Because rather than reflect on what they did wrong, that would allow for the election of Donald Trump, rather than recognize their own limitations and commit to certain changes in their behavior, they decided that, you know what, we'll get the deep state to go after Trump and create a soft coup, right? Robert Mueller in his report will definitely indict Trump, right? The
Hmm.
Joint Chiefs of Staff will overthrow Trump or whatever, okay? But basically the liberal elite sold their soul to the deep state. And then after the deep state realized, we're better off with Donald Trump because we need to create wars in the Middle East in order to expand the military industrial complex. Now the liberal elite's kind of stuck because, as you say, they don't have any real power, and
Hmm.
they've sold their soul to the deep state a long time ago.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, let's do this. We have about 20 more minutes to go or so, and you've been very generous with your time, and I've
Right.
really been invigorated by this discussion. But let me open it up to some questions, which you could entertain if you're willing.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, Ateas, you're up there first. Go for it.
Yeah, I had a question about it was briefly talked about, which is the idea that, Johnny Carson being, a very unifying figure,
Hmm.
and how everything is kind of self-curated. So, like, if you want news, you go on the internet and you get news for yourself. Um, I guess my question would be, like, how much of it do you attribute to this kind of theory of a civil war, of this idea that nothing is unifying anymore? I think the only last thing that's unifying really is probably sports, but I don't really think that's kind of powerful.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You have a breakdown over the past 20 years of three things that were unifying: ideology, narrative stories, and institutions, right? So Johnny Carson was an institution in America. Television was an institution in America because everyone just sat down as a family and watched TV together. That's what you did in the 60s and 50s and 70s. So all these unifying forces, especially ideology, like what does America stand for? What is America about? Like what is the American dream? I mean, it's died out. I mean, it's been ruptured, and again, there's really no going back to it. The only unifying ideology on the horizon that I see is Christian nationalism, to return to America's roots as the New Jerusalem, as a city on the hill. That's about it. And I think that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. I mean, the fact that after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, you had a lot of people celebrate his death is a really bad omen for America. It just tells us that there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no sense of civility in America anymore. I mean, we've all been primed by social media to behave with outrage, to behave with extreme emotion. And there's really no space for self-reflection, for restraint, for civility anymore in America.
Yes. I think
Oh,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah, sure. You can
I
follow
was
up.
just going to add one more thing. It does seem like, whoever has the strongest channel of information, which would be like the theocracy of the Catholic Church or
Yeah.
something, you know, if you have like the most unifying channel for a message, you would then become the establishment of messaging people. So, I guess I'm just reinforcing and agreeing with what you're saying.
Yeah, again, I would not underestimate the power and the reach of the Catholic Church. I mean, they have a hierarchy. They're extremely well organized, and they've been lying in wait for hundreds of years, right? I mean, like there's just for hundreds of years, there's been this secret war between the Jesuits and the Freemasons. And this war has spilled over to America, and this war has never gone away. So yeah, I mean, like, watch out for the Catholic Church. In fact, I mean, like, look at Candace Owens, and just look at what she says, what she does. I think a lot of her agenda aligns with that of the Catholic Church.
Do you think Christian nationalism will be inflected by Catholicism? When I am, yeah, North America might have been Catholic at the beginning, at the beginning of the conquest. That's for sure. But this is a Protestant country, but maybe that was the 20th century Christianity, which was that everyone was Protestant, including the Catholics and the Jews. They were just another version of Protestantism, and that's something that's older, in fact. And do you think Catholicism will be the driving force of Christian nationalism, or will it go more to a Protestant fundamentalism?
Um, I mean, if you look at the situation right now, certainly the Catholic Church and the Mormons have huge advantages. But as you say, what matters is the soul of this country. What
Hmm.
matters is what Americans fundamentally believe. And I think that Americans are fundamentally anti-Catholic Church. They don't like hierarchy. They don't like the idea of a pope. I mean, Americans fundamentally believe in individualism and in
Hmm.
liberty, and direct access to God. So, yeah, I think the Catholic Church and the Mormons have a huge advantage. But as you say, what will actually happen, we don't know. Also, we have to remember that this is a dynamic, like the situation is very dynamic, and so we're discounting geophysical events, like real geophysical events that could happen to America over the next 20 years. I know people argue about climate change, but what we can't argue is that the Earth undergoes extreme weather now and then. Right? We
Hmm.
could be facing a mini ice age in next 20 years, and if you have a mini ice age, all bets are off the table, right?
Hmm.
Because like you have a major depopulation event. So it's a very dynamic situation. I'm not going to say the Catholic Church will end up as the winners. I'm not going to say the Protestants are end up as the winners. I think Christian theocracy is the end result, but which faction determines this Christian theocracy, I can't really say at this point.
Interesting. Henry, you're next.
Yeah, a lot of the discussion lately has been about the three Abrahamic religions, and for obvious reasons, and potential manifestation of their eschatology. But I'm curious, how do you see the other world religions playing into this event? The Buddhists perhaps have less political influence, but the Hindus, and most interestingly, the atheist Chinese, like one big mystery for me is what the relationship is between China and Israel. So I'm just curious how you see that playing
Hmm.
out.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't really know much about Hinduism. I don't think it's eschatological, right? I mean, like it's like Buddhism. It's not eschatological in the way that the Abrahamic religions are eschatological, and that's important because it's eschatology that drives geopolitics. It's eschatology that
Hmm.
wants you to go and like do something in Jerusalem. So I do know a lot about China because I obviously live in China and I'm Chinese. China's not interested in geopolitics. China's not interested in what's happening in the Middle East. It's interested in trade. It's interested in exporting its cheap labor overseas. But China's not going to militarily intervene on anyone's behalf outside Chinese borders. It doesn't do that. It's not going to invade Taiwan. I know there's a lot of discussion that China might use all this upheaval around the world to reclaim Taiwan. China's not going to do that. It doesn't have to do that.
Hmm.
China is big enough as it is. It's called the Middle Kingdom because it sees itself as a universe unto itself. It wants to be left alone, basically. And that's the worldview of China. We're the Middle Kingdom. Everyone else is barbaric. They slaughter themselves in the Middle East. That's because what they do. That's
Hmm.
what they do. They just slaughter themselves like over there. Let's ignore it. I live in China and I check the news every day, and the Chinese are not reporting what's happening around the world. China's just
Hmm.
not interested in what's happening in the world. The other thing is that if you just look at the economic situation in China right now, it's very, very unstable. And there's a real fear that the economy would get worse and worse. And I think the Communist Party is more concerned about domestic unrest than it is about, overseas wars.
So it's interesting because you learned English in Canada from the time you were 6. Do you think that your worldview is obviously inflected by your education and experience, but I think my impression is also that you're really tapped into social media and thinking in the West and in America. Like
Yeah,
I presume you're following Twitter in a way that you're
yeah,
not looking at a Chinese newspaper, which might be operating in a different realm, as you say.
yeah. So the messaging is more controlled in China. So if you want to know the official line, then you read the Chinese newspaper, which will not take very long. But if you really want to understand the Geist in China, if you really want to understand how people are thinking, you need to walk.
China has to support, guys, Iran. Like the petrol, like you get oil from the Iran. I think it's too much. Like you need to support the Iran because Iran survives, the energy survive China. Like I don't think China is not seeing it. Like they are not seeing a Jerusalem, but they are seeing it's their neighbors. Still, they have like eyes on the neighbors. What is happening with their neighbors?
Streets. You need to see them in restaurants. You need to analyze their faces. This is different in the West because social media, I mean, it's really like the id of America, right? I mean, like just by analyzing social media, you get a deep sense of the fundamental feelings that are underpinning American society right now. And so I see a lot of hatred, I see a lot of anger, I see a lot of confusion, I see a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. Andrew J.
Hey, what's going on? I'm just curious. As far as like a next 9/11 moment, excuse me, do you guys think like a cybersecurity event, like a global or national or regional kind of hacking event from another state like Russia or even like a corporation could kind of occur? I could see something like that happening in the next 10 to so years just because we're so on our phones at this point. It seems to me like fertile ground for some sort of like terrorist attack. And then you have the misinformation of, oh, that's a false flag. It was really Israel who did it, or I could see something like that happen. Just want to get your guys' take on that.
That's a fantastic question. So I say that 9/10 was like 9/11, and not in that like Charlie Kirk was assassinated. What mattered was a spectacle,
Hmm.
right? So after 9/11, what you saw on TV all the time, on constant, replay, was the planes hitting the Twin Towers and the Twin Towers coming down. It was to induce trauma.
It was so weird how the like plane hit the tower and tower went down. That's so weird. Tower need to go like this way or maybe this way. How they even went down? Like how did they make people fool? I think they made everyone.
You do that through spectacle, through
Hmm.
real life spectacle, right? And so remember, like after the shooting, that graphic video was unleashed on the internet. Everyone saw it. You didn't want to see it. You just saw it by accident. And guess what?
Hmm.
It's stuck in your mind. And that's going to have long-term psychological consequences. It's going to change the psyche. It's going to change the worldview. So that's what you want to create. You want to create a violent spectacle that traumatizes the population, it hypnotizes in a way that allows you to program the population in a way that you want. Remember, after 9/11, the Patriot Act was rammed through Congress, and then George Bush said, we're going to invade Iraq. And people were never like, why are we doing this? Because people were so shocked by the event that they just sort of passively accepted it. And that's what trauma victims do. Like they just accept the world around them because they've disassociated from the world around them, right? So the idea is to create the spectacle. So that's why hacking doesn't really do anything. Like how are you traumatized if your computer goes off for a week? Like who cares, right? The point is to create a spectacle. The other thing that's really important is that if you look at all the
Your link is no, bro. You can join my like if you go in my channel, go toward the about, and there you can get a link. It's not expired. You can go there. Sometimes it says it's expired, but it's not expired.
major spectacles of the past 20th century, including the killing of
Go
JFK, 9/11,
in my
and
home, and you can get
Charlie
a there
Kirk,
link.
you will see massive occult symbolism around the event, right?
Hmm.
So, Charlie Kirk was killed 33 weeks after the inauguration of Donald Trump. He was killed 34 days before his 32nd birthday. It
Hmm.
took 33 hours for the FBI to capture the culprit. The press conference lasted.
And some Israelis were dancing at that time, like Mossad were dancing. They captured some people, they were dancing when the Twin Tower went down. It's wild. It's wild.
33 minutes. The shooter was 22 years old. I could go on and on, but it's all programmed into the event to create a subconscious fear and trauma. It's all really well orchestrated. I mean, this event must have been like years in the making. Maybe they didn't know it would be. Maybe they didn't pick the victim yet, but they
Okay,
wanted
it's
to create
what?
a
Let's
9/11
get it.
spectacle in order to traumatize the masses, in order to push their agenda further.
Fascinating.
Do you think COVID was a kind of, it wasn't a spectacle, but I'm seeing in this hypothetical cybersecurity event that I'm talking about, like a mass hacking or something like that, that I was kind of thinking of something like COVID, where it was just, it was shocking, but it was also, debilitating from your normal way of life. That's, I guess, more so than a 9/11 kind of spectacle event, like you're saying.
Um, yeah, I think COVID was an experiment. I think like the situation got out of control, and they responded, and like in the response, they recognized, oh my God, the masses are just sheep. They'll just do whatever we tell them to do, um, and they got away with it. And so I think the next thing will be the actual event, which is maybe the implanting microchips into your bodies. That I think is the real intention. I think COVID might have been an experiment.
Hmm. Regular guy?
So you talk about this Christian theocracy and the alternatives that it could be. You said it could be Catholic, it could be Protestant. You mentioned the Mormons, which that's kind of a far cry to what the typical American is used to in terms of theology. But who do you think is when? And you say that's going to wrap up the conflict in the U.S. That we're going to see. Who is ultimately going to be the real loser of this Christian theocracy, and who's going to be the winners? Like, is it going to be the common man because they're going to be issued a wife, or is it going to be, and are the losers going to be non-heteronormative people, or is it going to be women,
Liberals. Yeah.
or just atheists, even if they're white and
I think literally this man love to talk. Like most of the bit in this video, he is talking.
male?
I'm so confused. Man.
Yeah. So I don't see history as a conflict between individuals and between peoples. I see history as fundamentally a conflict over ideas and narratives and ideology, right? So at the founding of America, there was this major conflict between the Enlightenment ideal and the um, Christian utopia ideal, right? I mean, remember, like the Pilgrims came to America to create a Christian utopia, the New Jerusalem, and that sort of got sidelined because of these Enlightenment ideals that have now manifested themselves into a multicultural, liberal, secular society. And that I think will be the real loser. Like, goodbye multiculturalism. We don't want that. We want everyone to be Christian. Goodbye
Mhm.
secularism. Goodbye liberalism. So I mean, the very idea of liberalism will die in this process. I mean, like that's what I think is going to happen.
Well,
I think it. Uh, yeah, go on, regular guy.
I asked that because of well, in addition to the Enlightenment versus Christian theology in the U.S., there was the slaver culture, which we saw emerge in the 19th century, and the infamous Mudstill speech, which says that, society is hierarchical and some people need to have tragic lots where they need to be manual laborers. And if we're not on top, we might be at the bottom of the mud still. And I'm wondering who would be at the bottom of the mud still in terms of groups in this Christian theocracy you see emerging.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't really see the sort of the economic hierarchy changing that much. I mean, like, it's very easy for these liberal elites to don on new clothes, right? Like before they were liberals and now they're just priests. Like, what's the difference, really?
Mhm.
What they do behind closed doors is their own business, right? But what they do in public, I mean, they will pay adherence to the theocracy, but behind closed doors, they'll still operate their secret societies, which will be liberal in nature. So I don't really see the economic hierarchy changing that much. Hey, Richard, I apologize, but I need to go because I have another call at 11 o'clock. So
No
it's
problem.
been great.
Yeah, we have really benefited from your being.
Yeah, if you